I've been the operations manager at Millwood Tower for 6 years now. It's a mid-rise office building in the financial district, 12 floors, built in 1962, renovated twice since then, the kind of place you'd walk past without noticing. Gray concrete facade, narrow windows, a lobby with marble that's been polished so many times it started to wear thin in the center where people walk. I handle maintenance requests, coordinate with the cleaning staff, manage vendor relationships, and make sure the building runs the way it's supposed to. The steady work, predictable, the kind of job that doesn't follow you home. I started here because my father managed the building before me. He did it for 31 years, from the time I was 7 until he retired at 64. I grew up hearing about boiler malfunctions and tenant complaints over dinner. He'd come home with that particular kind of exhaustion that comes from dealing with people all day, not physically tired, but worn down in a way that sleep doesn't fix. Still, he never missed a day. Never complained, not really. When I was finishing my business degree and trying to figure out what came next, he mentioned that the ownership group was looking for someone to take over. He didn't push, just said the position was available and that if I wanted it, he'd introduce me. I took the job because I needed the income and because it felt like the responsible thing to do. My father had given decades to the place. There was a continuity to it that appealed to me, even if I didn't fully understand why at the time. The pay was decent, the hours were manageable, and I liked the idea of working with systems, keeping something functional, making sure all the parts work together. I'm good at that. I've always been good at that. The building itself is straightforward. Floors 2 through 12 are leased to various businesses, accounting firms, insurance brokers, a few law offices, a graphic design studio, a therapy practice. The first floor is lobby and building services. There's a basement for mechanical systems, storage, and archives. The structure is solid. The tenants are mostly stable, long-term. It's the kind of place where people work quietly and leave at 5:30. No drama, no noise. My father trained me for 3 months before he stepped away. He walked me through the vendor contracts, introduced me to the building engineer and the custodial staff, showed me where everything was kept. He was thorough. He made lists. He had a system for everything, and he made sure I understood it. But there were some things he explained differently. Not with the same practical tone he used for everything else. He'd pause before he spoke, choose his words carefully, and watch my face while he talked. The first time was during the second week. We were in my office, his office, then going over the tenant lease agreements. He stopped mid-sentence, closed the folder, and looked at me. There are some procedures that aren't in the manual, he said. They're not written down anywhere, but they're just as important as anything else. I waited. When someone dies in the building, he continued, you need to follow a specific protocol. It doesn't matter if it's a heart attack, a stroke, an accident, whatever it is. The protocol is the same. I nodded. I assumed he was talking about liability, about calling the right authorities, about documentation. You call 911 first, he said. Always. That's standard. You secure the area, you keep people away, you cooperate fully with the paramedics and police. You do everything exactly the way you're supposed to. But after that, after they've done their work and the body is ready to be removed, you need to check something. He pulled out a key from his desk drawer. It was old, brass, with a circular bow and a long shaft. It looked like the kind of key you'd use for an antique lock, something from another era. Before they take the body out of the building, he said, you go down to the basement. There's a door at the far end of the mechanical room. It's locked. You open it with this key. Inside, there's a logbook. You write down the name of the deceased, the date, the time of death, and the floor where it happened. Then you wait. Wait for what? For confirmation, he said. It usually takes about 5 minutes. You'll know when it happens. I asked him what kind of confirmation. He didn't answer directly. If you get confirmation, you go back upstairs and tell the medical examiner or the funeral home that they can proceed. If you don't get confirmation within 10 minutes, you come back upstairs and tell them there's a delay. You tell them the family has requested additional time, or that there's a procedural hold, or whatever makes sense in the moment. You do not let them remove the body until you get confirmation. What happens if they try to take it anyway? My father looked at me for a long moment. They won't be able to, he said. The elevator won't move. The doors won't open. If they try to use the stairs, they'll find the stairwell doors locked, even though they shouldn't be. The building won't allow it. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. I know how it sounds, he said, but this is part of the job. You'll see it for yourself eventually. When you do, you'll understand why the protocol exists. He put the key on the desk between us. The ownership group is aware of this, he said. They've always been aware. It's older than the current ownership. Older than me. Older than the building, maybe. I don't know the full history. I just know that it works, and that it's necessary. I took the key. I didn't know what else to do. Over the next few weeks, he explained the other procedures. He called them the secondary protocols, as if that made them sound more official, more routine. They were simple, mostly. Small things that seemed arbitrary at first. If someone reports feeling watched in the stairwells after 7 p.m., you're supposed to turn off the lights in the basement for 30 seconds, then turn them back on. If a tenant complains that their office feels significantly colder than usual, not just a little cooler, but cold enough that they can see their breath, you go to that floor after hours and leave a glass of water on the floor outside their door. You come back the next morning and check it. If the water is gone, you file a maintenance report and have the HVAC system inspected. If the water is still there, untouched, you leave it for another night. If someone hears footsteps in the hallway when no one else is there, you check the logbook in the basement. If the most recent entry is less than 6 months old, you ignore the complaint. If it's older than 6 months, you're supposed to walk the hallway yourself at the same time the following day, carrying a flashlight, even if the lights are working. My father explained each of these as if they were standard safety measures. He didn't use words like ghost or haunted. He talked about building systems, about balance, about maintenance. He said the building had requirements just like any other structure. You maintain the foundation, you maintain the elevators, you maintain the plumbing. And you maintain the other things, too. The things that don't show up on inspection reports. I didn't believe him. Not really. I thought it was some kind of tradition he'd bought into, maybe something the previous manager had convinced him of, and he'd never questioned it. I thought I'd humor him until he retired, and then I'd quietly stop following the stranger protocols and see what happened. Nothing, I assumed. Nothing would happen. He retired in April. I took over fully in May. The building continued as it always had. Quiet, functional, unremarkable. The first death happened in July. A man named Patrick Dunn. He was 57, an accountant with one of the firms on the 8th floor. He'd worked there for 14 years. Came in every day at 8, left at 5, kept to himself. On a Thursday afternoon, just after lunch, he collapsed at his desk. Cardiac arrest. His coworkers called 911 immediately. I was notified within minutes. I went up to the 8th floor and did what I was supposed to do. I kept people calm. I kept the area clear. I met the paramedics when they arrived and directed them to the office. They worked on him for 20 minutes. It was too late. They called it at the scene. The police came. They asked questions, took statements, checked for anything suspicious. There wasn't anything. It was straightforward. A man with a heart condition had a heart attack at his desk. It happens. The medical examiner arrived an hour later. They were ready to transport the body. I told them I needed to make a quick call first, building policy, notification to ownership, that kind of thing. They waited in the hallway. I went down to the basement. The mechanical room was loud, the way it always is. Boilers and pipes and the hum of the HVAC system. I walked to the far end, past the water heater, past the shelves of cleaning supplies and old office furniture that tenants had left behind. There was a door I'd never paid much attention to before. It was plain, painted the same industrial beige as the walls, easy to miss if you weren't looking for it. I used the key my father had given me. The room inside was small, maybe 8 feet by 10. There was a single light bulb overhead, no switch that I could see. It was just on. The walls were bare concrete. In the center of the room was a metal desk, old and rusted at the edges, and on the desk was a logbook. Thick, leather-bound, the kind of thing you'd expect to see in a museum. Next to it was a pen. Just a cheap ballpoint pen, the kind you'd find in any office. I opened the logbook. The pages were filled with names, dates, times. Handwriting I recognized as my father's covered the most recent entries. Before that, someone else's handwriting. Before that, someone else's. The entries went back decades. I didn't read them all. I found the first blank line and wrote down the information. Patrick Dunn. July 14th. 1:37 p.m. 8th floor. I put the pen down and waited. The room was silent except for the faint hum from the mechanical systems outside. I checked my watch. 5 minutes passed. Then 6. I started to think that maybe my father had been wrong. That maybe this was just some strange ritual that didn't actually mean anything. Then I felt it. It wasn't a sound. It wasn't a movement. It was a shift in the air, a change in pressure, like the feeling you get when a door closes in another room and you sense it even though you didn't hear it. The light bulb overhead flickered once, very briefly. The logbook on the desk moved. Not much, just a quarter of an inch to the left, as if someone had brushed against the desk. But I hadn't touched it. I hadn't moved. I looked down at the page where I'd written Patrick Dunn's name. There was a mark next to it now. A small check mark, drawn in ink that was still wet. I hadn't drawn it. I put the pen down. I'd been standing 3 feet away from the desk. The check mark was there. I left the room. I locked the door behind me. I went back upstairs and told the medical examiner they could proceed. They wheeled Patrick Dunn's body to the elevator. The elevator worked. The doors opened. They took him down to the lobby and out to the van. No problems. No delays. I stood in the hallway and watched them go. That was the first time. There have been 6 deaths since then. Not all at once. Spread out over the years. Heart attacks mostly. 1 stroke. 1 choking incident in the 3rd floor break room. Each time I followed the protocol. I went to the basement. I wrote the information in the logbook. I waited. Each time the checkmark appeared. Each time the body was allowed to leave. But 3 months ago something changed. A woman named Angela Pryor. She was 62, worked for the insurance brokerage on the 5th floor. She'd been with the company for almost 20 years. Efficient, professional, well-liked. She had a seizure in the bathroom. By the time someone found her, she was unconscious. The paramedics couldn't revive her. She was pronounced dead at the scene. I followed the protocol. I went to the basement. I opened the door. I wrote her name in the logbook. Angela Pryor. October 9th. 3:42 p.m. 5th floor. I waited. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. 15. No checkmark. The light didn't flicker. The air didn't shift. Nothing moved. I waited another 10 minutes. Still nothing. I went back upstairs. The medical examiner was waiting in the lobby with the gurney. I told him there was a delay, that the family had requested additional time to say goodbye, that I needed to make some calls. He wasn't happy about it, but he agreed to wait. I called the building's ownership group. I didn't know what else to do. I spoke to a man named Mr. Carver. I'd only met him once, briefly, during my first week. He was older, probably in his 70s, with the kind of voice that made it clear he was used to being listened to. I explained the situation. I told him I'd followed the protocol exactly, but that I hadn't received confirmation. He was quiet for a moment. "How long has it been?" he asked. "Almost 40 minutes now. And you're certain you wrote everything correctly? Name, date, time, floor." "Yes." Another pause. "Go back down," he said. "Check the logbook again. See if there's any mark at all. Sometimes it's faint." I went back down. I checked. There was nothing. I called him back. "All right," he said. "This happens occasionally. Not often, but it does happen. You're going to need to keep the body in the building overnight. Tell the medical examiner that there's been a complication with the family's arrangements, that you'll contact him in the morning. If he insists on removing the body today, tell him the building's freight elevator is malfunctioning and that you can't allow them to use the passenger elevator for a gurney. He'll leave. And then what? Then you wait. You check the logbook every 2 hours. When the checkmark appears, you call the medical examiner back and have him retrieve the body. What if it doesn't appear? "It will," Mr. Carver said. "It always does. It just takes longer sometimes." I did what he said. The medical examiner left, frustrated but compliant. I told Angela's co-workers that the family needed time, that everything was being handled appropriately. I stayed in the building after everyone else left. I checked the logbook at 6 p.m., then 8 p.m., then 10 p.m. No check mark. I tried to sleep in my office. Couldn't. I kept thinking about Angela Pryor's body, still on the 5th floor, covered with a sheet, alone. I checked again at midnight. Still nothing. At 2 a.m., I went back down to the basement. I opened the door to the small room. The logbook was still on the desk, still open to the page with Angela's name. There was something new. Next to her name, instead of a checkmark, there was a single word written in the same ink, in handwriting that wasn't mine. Waiting. I stared at it. I didn't understand. Waiting for what? I went back upstairs. I didn't know what else to do. I sat in my office until morning. At 6 a.m., I called Mr. Carver. There's no checkmark, I said. There's a word instead. It says waiting. He was silent for a long time. I see, he said finally. That's unusual. I'll need to make some calls. In the meantime, you're going to need to move the body. Move it where? To the sub-basement. We don't have a sub-basement. Yes, he said. You do. He told me where to find the access door. It was behind a shelving unit in the storage area of the basement, hidden from casual view. He told me there would be stairs and at the bottom a room. He told me to bring the body down there and place it on the table in the center of the room. He told me not to stay down there any longer than necessary. I asked him why. Because the building is deciding, he said. And you don't want to be there while it does. I waited until the building was fully staffed, until there were people on every floor, until everything seemed normal and busy. Then I went up to the 5th floor. Angela Pryor's body was still in the office where she died, covered with a sheet in a back room, out of sight. I propped open the stairwell door with a doorstop, went back into the office, and wheeled the gurney the paramedics had left behind into the hallway. I moved her as quickly and quietly as I could, down the stairs, across the lobby, into the basement. I found the access door exactly where Mr. Carver said it would be. It wasn't locked. I opened it and saw stairs leading down into darkness. There was a light switch at the top. I flipped it. A single bulb illuminated the stairwell. Barely. I brought the gurney to the top of the stairs. I realized I couldn't wheel it down. The stairs were too narrow. I would have to carry her. I lifted her as carefully as I could. She was heavier than I expected. I took the stairs slowly, one at a time, trying not to think about what I was doing. The sub-basement was smaller than the basement. The ceiling was lower, the walls were older, original concrete, not the refinished surfaces upstairs. The air was damp and cold. There was a single room at the bottom of the stairs and inside a metal table. It looked like something from a morgue. I placed Angela Pryor's body on the table. I arranged the sheet over her as respectfully as I could. Then I left. I climbed the stairs, closed the door, and moved the shelving unit back into place. I went to the small room with the logbook. I checked Angela's entry. The word waiting was still there. That was 3 months ago. I checked the logbook every day, sometimes twice a day. The word hasn't changed. Angela Pryor's body is still in the sub-basement. I go down there once a week to check on it. I don't know why. There's nothing I can do. The body hasn't decayed. It looks exactly the same as it did the day I brought it down there. The air in the room is cold enough that I can see my breath, even though there's no refrigeration system. Mr. Carver told me to be patient. He said the building has its own timeline, its own process. He said that in the 60 years the building has been standing, this has happened 4 times before. Each time, the body was eventually released. The longest wait was 8 months. I asked him what the building was waiting for. He said he didn't know. He said no one knows. He said the building was constructed on the site of something older, something that had been there long before the city was built up around it. He said the original ownership group made an agreement when they broke ground in 1962, and that the agreement is still in place. He said that as long as the protocols are followed, the building functions, provides. It allows commerce, allows life, allows work to happen within its walls. But it has requirements. And sometimes those requirements include waiting. I asked him what happens if we don't wait, if we force the issue, if we just remove the body ourselves. He said I already knew the answer to that. He was right. I did. Since Angela Pryor died, small things have changed in the building. Tenants on the 5th floor, the floor where she worked, have started complaining about the cold. Maintenance has checked the HVAC system a dozen times. There's nothing wrong with it. The temperature on that floor is the same as every other floor. But people are wearing coats at their desks. 3 people have requested to be moved to different offices. The stairwell between the 4th and 5th floors is always dark now, even though I've replaced the bulbs twice. They burn out within a day. Last week, one of the tenants, a lawyer from the 9th floor, told me he saw someone standing at the end of the hallway near the elevator. He said she was just standing there, facing the wall, not moving. He called out to her, asked if she needed help. She didn't respond. He walked toward her, and when he got closer, she was gone. He said the hallway was empty. No doors open, no sound of footsteps. Just gone. He described her. Professional clothing, dark hair, middle-aged. He didn't know Angela Pryor. He'd never met her, but the description matched. I went to the logbook that night. The word waiting was still there, but underneath it, in the same handwriting, a second word had appeared. Listening. I don't know what it means. I don't know what the building is listening for, or what it wants. Mr. Carver told me to continue following the protocols, to keep the building running, to be patient. He said the situation would resolve itself. He said it always does. But this morning, when I checked the logbook, there was a third word. Deciding. I'm writing this from my office. It's just after midnight. The building is empty except for me. I've been here for 6 years. I followed every protocol. I've done everything I was supposed to do. My father did the same for 31 years before me. The building has always held up its end. It has always functioned. It has always provided. But I think something is changing. A few minutes ago, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my office. Slow, deliberate, the sound of dress shoes on tile. I opened the door. The hallway was empty. The lights on the 5th floor are flickering. I can see them from my office window, reflected in the glass of the building across the street. On and off. On and off. I'll check the logbook again in the morning. I'll follow the protocol. I'll wait. But I think the building is finished waiting. And I think it's decided.